All right, so with the growing anticipation for Shiki's potential return to One Piece in Elbaf, I wanted to talk about Roger versus Shiki, the truth of what happened, the truth of where Shiki would scale today. Now, some of the evidence supporting Shiki is coming back to Elbaf is that on one of the cover panels way back, there was somebody with golden hair speaking with Crocus who's wearing this specific style hat. We see a silhouette of somebody that looks exactly like the guy that was talking with Crocus on Elbaf, and then we see yet another silhouette with spiky hair, the strong world beast, which was synonymous with Shiki, although the movie itself is non-canon. Chapter 0 is canon, and we had multiple hints towards Shiki even in Wano, with the former clone fruit user, the old hag as Kaido called her, turning into Shiki for seemingly no reason in Oden's flashback. Also his prominence in the Rocks Pirates as of late. So there's been a lot of hints towards Shiki. It lines up with what he said in chapter 0 that he would be making a return at some point. It makes a lot of sense. We don't know for sure if it's going to be him. I'd personally like it to be him. But also in Wano, I believe in chapter 929, we get this image here in just like a random backdrop where Frankie's talking to some old guy, and we get actually that same hat with what looks to be a wig that matches up directly with the guy that was on that cover panel. So does that lead us to believe that it could be a hat and a wig? Is he faking us out here? Is that what Oda's doing? Is he trolling, or is he just hinting toward that guy's prominence? You could take multiple interpretations with that. Some people believe that the hair is too short to be Shiki, which does kind of hold some merit, but it has been a long time since we've seen Shiki. It's possible, you know, his hair just got cut. But also in the recent silhouette, it looks like the hair is spiky all the way down his back, so I don't know. It is very confusing, but I wouldn't be surprised if this guy does turn out to just be Gabon, because it is a little bit odd that Shiki would be having like cordial conversations with Crocus. When you put it like that, it makes a lot more sense if it was Gabon or somebody part of the Roger Pirates. You could say that they just earned great respect and they just wanted to talk. He wanted to talk with Roger's doctor, talk about the old days, what like he did with Whitebeard. It's also possible that on the cover panel, it is just, you know, miscolored. It could be white hair, which could line up with Gabon, or maybe Gabon's hair is blonde now, who knows? But I wanted to lay this backdrop for you guys. So let's talk about Roger versus Shiki, what actually transpired with him and how strong he'd be potentially if he was to go up against Luffy here. So a lot of people like to use this statement right here, which claims Shiki the Golden Lion was a legendary pirate who once stood as equals with the great king of the pirates, Gold Roger. I've seen a lot of people talking about the fact that they can't actually find the source for where this came from, because this doesn't actually coincide with chapter 0. Like, it's not actually in the chapter. Even people that bought the actual thing have come out with claims saying that this is not actually part of the volume 0 or chapter 0. That's partially correct. This was released in Databook Blue Deep alongside the add-on that added chapter 0 to Blue Deep. So this does exist. It is a real thing. Here's the Japanese for it. There's another translation that basically says shoulder to shoulder with. In the end, the context is simply just this. One stood as equals is verbiage that's used a lot in One Piece without actually meaning that they're equal in strength. It's talking about equal in terms of presence, equal in terms of positioning, in terms of a hierarchy of the world. This makes sense considering that before the Yonko title was formed, Shiki, Whitebeard, and Roger were essentially the Yonko along with Big Mom, who was like a tier below them but still respected, as claimed in the Ace novel, which again is also canon. Other examples are Shanks, who has a similar statement in his Viva card that says something along the lines of, he grew to a level where he could speak and stand as equals with Whitebeard, despite the fact that Whitebeard is stated the strongest pirate even in old age, stated above Shanks, and it doesn't literally mean that they are equals. It just means that they both hold the Yonko position. To reinforce this further, even in some of the recent chapters in Elbaf, we get a similar statement from Dory and Broggy talking about Luffy now essentially standing as equals to Shanks, despite the fact that they don't have to scale to each other or have to be equals in terms of strength to get this kind of dialogue. So I would just immediately dismiss this statement as this, especially given that it's directly contradicted in the actual chapter 0. So a common misconception is that Shiki was beating Roger's ass in the Ed War and Roger escaped by the skin of his teeth because of a storm, and thus he got away, but Shiki was stronger all along. Now, if we go back to the chapter and we look at the dialogue, we see that Shiki was trying to recruit Roger to become part of his crew. He wanted him to be his right-hand man. He wanted to rule the world, and Roger said he had no desire to rule. It's actually pretty funny because this is hinting toward Shiki trying to fulfill Rock's wish as well, because Rock's wanted to rule the world. Then we cut to see this, which a lot of people leave out this context, that Roger had one singular ship and he was to face this enormous fleet of Shiki. And it stated that Shiki was the commander of the largest pirate fleet in the world, going up against one singular ship of Roger's. And in this moment, what you see is that Roger does not back down, as the crew is even nervous. Rayleigh even looked a little bit nervous, but some of the other crew were like, "Stop it, Captain, how many ships do you think there are?" And Roger replies after Shiki says, "So your answer, you're declining my proposition, your answer is that you want to die today?" And Roger says, "No, my answer is that I'm going to crush all of you." So then this one singular ship goes up against this entire fleet in what is known as the Ed War. And it says specifically Roger's ship was in a desperate situation. As you see that they're shooting cannons and everything is hitting the ship, all these ships firing on it, got to a state where it was so fucked up that they actually had to leave. And even that's unclear how the retreat took place, because it's kind of implied that the weather just kind of separated them. Half of Shiki's fleet was destroyed. The weather seemed to have got them away, but the ship was in dire straits. But Shiki was the one that took serious damage. Like, he's the one that had a fucking wheel of one of the ships in his head. Logic would tell you that either Roger put that there or an attack from Roger ended up sending Shiki flying into a situation where that would happen. It even gets even worse when you understand the context that this is a battle at sea and they're on ships, and Shiki is the guy that has a devil fruit that allows him to fly. So he has a massive advantage in this kind of setting, given that Roger's confined to fighting either on one of the ships or jumping briefly but having to land back down onto one of the ships, or potentially get thrown overboard into the sea where he's going to be at an even further disadvantage. So Shiki can kind of just hang up into the sky and barrage shit down at the ships, or not really have to worry about footing anywhere. So the way I look at it is like, Roger's in a complete disadvantageous position. He's outnumbered heavily. We don't have any metric to gauge the strength of any of the guys in Shiki's fleet, but we know that they have enough numbers to overwhelm them. Roger has a whole crew that he's trying to protect in this ship, including the likes of Kid Shanks and Kid Buggy, who, mind you, Buggy was there and he witnessed this fight and still came to the conclusion that the only pirate that could fight Roger to a standstill was Whitebeard, not Shiki, mind you. That'll kind of lead us to where we go later. Rayleigh and Gabon there can hold their own, but we don't know really the strength of the rest of the pirates either. And he's obviously protecting the Ora Jackson. Who knows what's on the ship? So it's a complete disadvantageous position where Roger still gets out and taking out half of Shiki's fleet, leaving Shiki in a heap with permanent damage. So much so that they're worried that if they try to remove it, Shiki might die. We don't get to see any of the feats on panel, unfortunately. We don't get to see any of the clashing, so we can't get into the nuances of specifically what happened. We can only just go based on what is stated about it and what's stated in the aftermath. And what's stated in the aftermath is like numerous concessions by either Shiki himself or by way of other people, where Shiki doesn't dispute any claims that Roger was simply above him. One of which being Sengoku, when Shiki shows up to Marineford, which is a whole nother point, where he shows up to Marineford because he was so pissed off that Roger could be captured, which kind of tells you, like, is this guy compensating for something here? Because he's basically saying Roger's captured. Is that a trustworthy source? Don't lie to me. Who's gonna believe that? You know full well what sort of man he is, talking to his crew that like encountered him during the Ed War. He's so pissed. He gets to Marineford. He's like, scum like you could never capture Roger. I know how strong he is. Like, he is almost taking Roger being captured as a slight at himself. Like, wow, the man I couldn't best got captured. Like, what the fuck? How is this possible? Like, it's almost like he's ashamed that he was inferior to this man. That's the gist I get. That's only the interpretation I can take, right? He then screams at the Empire King, so what? If he joined forces with me, we could have taken over the world. We couldn't get along, but live through the same age. If he's here, bring him out. If you're gonna kill him, then let me do it. Let me kill him. Like, let me get my get back. Maybe I'm just alone here, but all this dialogue to me speaks of admiration out of that battle. Like, Shiki can't fathom Roger being defeated, and he wanted to get his get back to be the one to defeat him. But then with Sengoku's dialogue, it's like outwardly confirmed. Like, Sengoku says, Roger the Pirate King, if you fought him, he'd be able to win and escape. His execution is scheduled for a week from now, where he was born. There's nothing you could do. Like, he says he'd be able to win and escape. Even the direct kanji states, if it were a fight with you, he would have escaped victorious. And Shiki doesn't dispute this claim. He literally just ignores that part of it and says, the legend of Roger, the Pirate King, will end in the weakest of the seas, the East Blue. Don't make me laugh. This is the worst humiliation. So instead of like attacking the point, like, no, I would have beat Roger or something. He's like, I'm not gonna let this great legend die in the East Blue, and he challenges Garp and Sengoku. And then Garp and Sengoku beat this man so bad that he's like bleeding a week after the fight. Like he's still actively bleeding, still actively fucked up to a point where he can't even move and is bleeding a week after the fight. Fortunately for him, in this chapter, we don't actually get a shot of Sengoku and Garp in the aftermath, but this panel here where Garp is talking to Roger, but right before he gets executed, should be around this time, so maybe it comes after, but I'm not going to just claim it is, but he looks unscathed here. We don't find out anything about their damages. All we know is that half of Marineford, the fortress, was destroyed. And if you know anything about how the admirals fight at Marineford during Marineford War and how Sengoku talks about it, it's not about the fortress. The fortress can be rebuilt. It's about the island. So in general, they do have to hold back at Marineford because they don't want to destroy the whole island. It's the monument to the people, but they also want to team up to mitigate the damage, which his destruction level doesn't look to me like the levels of destruction we had at Marineford. This guy's the float fruit. He's just floating ships, throwing ships into shit. So they have to deal with trying to protect shit and then take him out. So we don't know. There's no time frame on the battle, but we just know that he got his ass whooped. And he was bleeding a week later. When he goes to Whitebeard after this, he again implies inferiority to Roger. He's like, so what do you think of the world without Roger? There are no more walls to hold us in anymore. It's now your age, Whitebeard. And Whitebeard's like scoffing at this, like, bro, I never wanted to be Pirate King. I fucking am stayed to be the strongest pirate, homie. Like, don't include me in with you. If you came here to spout your nonsense, I'll drown you right here, Shiki. Like, implying he thinks he could beat him too. I mean, that's just banter, whatever, but it is what it is. Where it's like Shiki's like, yeah, the walls that were in front of us, Roger, the insurmountable wall, the Pirate King wall, is gone. So all I get from all chapter 0 is just basically a situation where Shiki is admitting inferiority to Roger throughout. And basically that seems to be everybody else's view as well on the outside. Now, I do think that he's in a relative tier with him. We have numerous statements grouping him in with Roger, Garp, Sengoku, Whitebeard, all his rivals in one of the magazines, like I talked about in the Ace novel, grouping him, Whitebeard, and Roger together. Then you have, of course, the numerous other points where Sengoku and Garp have moments where they're insinuated to be near equals or highly relative rivals. And then at the beginning of volume 0, it says like Garp wanted to take down Roger himself, and then Sengoku responds like, hey, Shiki's my business. Garp, make sure you don't go over there. So it was almost as if like they were preparing to set out to try to go intercept the Ad War or see what was going on with the Ad War. And then one of them was going to take one of them was going to take the other. So obviously, I think that they all are in a similar tier. And I don't want to discount the fact that he was able to at least fight for a period against the two of them, holding back on him. You know, not something to scoff at. He did get his ass whooped, but still cool. But yeah, I mean, they were all rivals in a 1v1 capacity. So I do think that Roger wins this fight. I think Roger is narratively portrayed to be above him. Hopefully one day we do get feats on the matter. Maybe God Valley will add some more insight into this, because Shiki was there. But I do think that Shiki coming back and being Luffy's opponent at this stage would make a lot of sense. It's somebody that could compete with Roger. Doesn't have to be equal to Roger, but it could be a logical next progression, you know, from Kaido. If they wanted to say Shiki's stronger than Kaido, I think a lot of people would buy that. Him coming back makes sense. They brought him into the canon of the story, even in recent times, as I talked about at the beginning of the video. So kind of need to wrap that story up, given that the Strong World movie isn't canon. He still technically has a plot that needs to be fulfilled. He needs to be accounted for in the verse. So it makes a lot of sense. So I hope that they do it. Hopefully he faces off with Luffy in an epic showdown for Elbaf. Let me know what you guys think below, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.